Hello and welcome to my guide for solo prepping Ceto as a tank in Eureka. I'll be showing two methods in this video. The first, beginner-friendly and reliable method. It won't let you down, honestly. And the only issue with it is that it's really slow. The second method is quicker, but it comes with risk. And should really only be done if you are a free trial player because the logos needed to make it are quite expensive. And you might as well just buy the Ceto item if you're going to put that much money into logos at that point. That said, you are going to be needing a full set of elemental gear plus the eye level 300 chest piece. I recommend putting substats on your Physios weapon. Determination and tenacity will help with this farm specifically. So if you have those, great. And with that said, let's hop straight into the first method. For the first method, we're going to be using a safe and reliable strategy that is Guardian and Bloodbath. You also might want to grab Fairy Buff, Protect, Shell, and Speed of the Remembered, as they will make things a little bit easier for you. That's up to you. You could probably live without those. I also have a food buff to make things just to go by just a little bit faster. So I'll start off by grabbing the mobs and making sure that my magia is set to offensive. There's no need to set it for defensive on this strategy. You just want to kill them as quick as possible. The downside of using this strategy is that it is somewhat slower than the second strategy, but the second strategy is a little bit chaotic and could kill you sometimes, which could then in turn end up being slower depending on how many times you die, or if you die rather. So back to this first strategy. You see I pulled all the mobs together, I pop Bloodbath, and I just start spamming my AoE. And at this point it's just AoEing until my Bloodbath runs out. And once your Bloodbath runs out, you can either Embalm or pop a bunch of mitigations. But essentially, you're going to need to buy some time so that your Bloodbath can get off a cooldown. So I would recommend running away from the enemies for a brief period in conjunction with using mitigations, or if you use your Embalm, you're typically fine. You typically don't have to move with the Embalm. But as you see here, I just use a bunch of mitigations and I start running away, pop a healing action, and right back to Bloodbath. But as you can see, it's pretty slow. I'm only a little bit, not even halfway. So yeah, it's gonna take a little bit. It's gonna take probably 3 minutes at least per pull. So pretty slow strategy, but this is what the strategy is, and it works. It's reliable, but again, it's just slow. So let's check out the second strategy. But the second strategy is really only used for warrior. So if you're not a warrior, sorry, but if you do have warrior level, you might be in luck with this next strategy. For the second strat, we'll be using a strat known as the Kata strat, short for Catastrophe L. For my logos actions, just set yours up exactly like I have mine set up, with rapid recast ready to go, along with the other additional logos actions there. In the top left, you'll notice the necessary buffs that you're going to need. You're going to need a Fairy buff, a Protect, a Shell, and a Spirit of the Remembered. You can also see that I have Food buff active in the top right. I highly recommend using that as well, as so that those will make your Catastrophe Ls more powerful. I recommend running a Determination Tenacity food. Those specifically are applicable to increasing the power of your Katas. You can also see that I am in Magia Defense. Fire are the mobs that we're about to be pulling, and I am in Fire Element. And I also have a macro to switch my Elemental to offense whenever I'm ready. And I highly recommend making that macro. It's just /Magia Auto. And that will switch you to offensive, assuming your Magia Auto is already set to default, which most people's are. And you can just keep spamming that macro to set it back to normal once you're done and you've set it. Let's say after the first pull you set it to offensive, you hit it a couple more times to reset it. With that said, you can also see that I have a strength pot, which we won't be using for the first pull. That's more for the second pull. So I'm just going to go ahead and start the playback here of how the first pull went, and you can see for yourself. Hopefully I can explain what's going on as I do it. So before the pull starts, you can see that I pop a Eureka potion, and I also have my Magia wheel set to fire, and I start collecting the mobs. And of course, the mobs are going to be difficult because they always like to turn at the last second just to be pieces of shit. And collecting the mobs, and I'm going to be using my AoE whenever I get the chance. And I'll be using the second combo in my AoE, and that second combo on Warrior will give me a 10% bonus to the damage that my katas will do, which is very helpful. So finishing up grabbing the mobs, I pop my rapid recast, and I pop my first plate, pop my Martialist, use my invuln, use the first kata, switch to the second kata, use the second kata, switch to the third kata, and use the third kata. Then I'll quickly use Equilibrium and shake it off so that I don't die to the mobs. It didn't look like I was in much danger there, but if I were to not have a healer in my party, you die very, very quickly if you don't use Equilibrium and shake it off the moment that that third kata is finished. So for the second pull, we're going to be using a Eureka potion before the pull starts. Also make sure your Magia auto macro is set to off because the first pull sets it to offensive, so you need to correct that before starting the second pull. Make sure your Magia wheel is set to fire, and you'll notice that we only have 2 katas this time, and that's because we're going to be using a strength pot to make our katas more powerful. That way we don't need a third one. We get to save the logos that way. I recommend using a Kugane vendor strength pot or better. If you have better, that's great. You might wonder, well, why don't you use strength pots for both pulls? That's because the cooldown on these strength pots is really long, and you can only pick one of these 2 pulls to use it on. I use it on the second one. So you'll notice I use a strength pot, I use both my katas, and this time you use your raw intuition, your AoE, and you want to weave your mitigations here in between your AoEs, but you'll notice that I do not do that, and that's because I have a healer. It just makes things easier, and I wasn't really worried about it at the time, but that's what you're supposed to do. You're now left with 0 plates that you can really use, so you're going to need to reset your plates so that they are ready for the next cycle. So that's what I'm going to go do now. I'm going to grab plates, but I also need to refresh my Magia wheel because it's only left with 1 spin right now, so make sure you refresh your Magia wheel, you grab plates, and you're ready for the next cycle. With that said, one last thing I would like to say about this strategy is that I highly recommend using this strategy with a friend or someone else in the instance that can res you if it's your first time doing it, because the timing is pretty tight, and if you're learning, it can be difficult to learn. Once you've got it, it's pretty consistent as long as I should say it's very consistent as long as you follow everything the right way. The only thing that will trip you up is maybe ping issues. If you have really bad ping, you're not going to be able to fit in that 3 katas and a heal. But other than that, there's really no reason why you should be dying other than you forgot to click a button or you weren't fast enough to click a button. The timing is pretty tight here, so no shame in that. I do it all the time because I'm just bad at the game. But yeah, with that said, you can see I made my next set of plates. I forgot to grab rapid recast, so I'm doing that now. And I'm gonna grab the Magia Melder, and I'm ready for my next cycle. That concludes the tutorial video for these 2 different methods of farming Ceto as a solo. If you have any questions, you can try to post it in the comments, but I don't check my comments very often, I'll be honest. But who knows, maybe someone else will answer it, or I'll one day suddenly have the urge to go check my comments. But Otherwise, I wish you good luck with your preps, and I hope you get the qual.